Tell you what, as we get ready, we're going to finish with Joseph today. And we're going to do it, and remember, my lips are going to move fast. So if you got a question, say it afterwards. No, I'm just kidding. No, we're going to get going. We're talking. We're going to be in chapter 45 of Genesis here. But in order to get to there, we've got to go through chapters 42 through 44. Because this is, and I'm not going to read all 127 verses or whatever it is, because I could do it, but it would probably tell the story. But we won't all want to eat afterwards. I know. Get somewhere around this. But anyway, we get to chapter 42, and there's still famine and hardship, and Jacob sending them to Egypt to go buy food. And because Joseph's selling it to everybody there. And I love this verse in chapter, I'm going to read this verse from chapter 42. Verse 1 says, when Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you just keep looking at each other? And all of us have been there. If you're a child or a husband, you've got this look from your wife or your parents, in a sense going, duh, what are you still doing? I don't know, guys, have you ever been where your wife has said, go into this room, into this door, on this shelf, it's this color, and you'll find what I'm looking for. Now go. And you're like, okay. You know, we go in there, and it's not there. To my knowledge, I followed the instructions explicitly. And I come back and I have that look on my face, and my wife's like, didn't you find it? Didn't you get it? And then she walks in there and grabs it. It drives me nuts. It happens. But I can imagine these guys, these sons, all sitting there as Jacob's looking at them going, duh, we're starving. There's food in Egypt. Why are you still standing here? I just love that. I just think it's interesting why God put certain things in the Bible. You know, right? This isn't relevant to a lot of stuff, but for me, I love things like this because for me, it proves that they were human. These people didn't walk on water like Jesus did. They weren't above. It wasn't going like Joseph and Abraham and Isaac going, oh, you know, they were human. And so anyway, Joseph being human as well, he sees his brothers come down to Egypt. Of course, Jacob didn't want his next youngest one go because, you know, they all remember what happened to Joseph, right? Joseph got thrown into a cistern, got sold. Later on, they report back to Jacob that he's been eaten by a wild animal, and they show him the coat. And so the next youngest son, he's not letting out of his sight. It was that tragic or that tremendous of an event for the family that they all remember it. Anyway, they come up, Joseph recognizes them. He gives them a hard time. As he should. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm just thinking of as a brother, you know, if I was going to, you know, if my brother did something to me, I want to give him a hard time back. You know, families like that, right? Only we can pick on family. You know, in a sense. So anyway, we're going through there. Chapter 43, they returned back, you know, Joseph had told them, you know, leave one here, go back, bring the other youngest one to me. This is the paraphrase version, okay? We're getting through this quickly. Anyway, we're going through this, and Benjamin, you know, said he convinced that he's going to be okay. Don't take my youngest son. Take more, and he says, now listen, Jacob's like freaking out when you're taking my next youngest one back with you. I want him back, so take extra silver. Take some stuff. Take some balm. Take some honey. Take some pistachio nuts. I think that's amazing. They put pistachio nuts in there. You know, take some almonds, all this kind of stuff. Take extra to make sure that my son comes back to me. Because Joseph has recognized his brothers, and he's toying with them. Verse 44, they come back. Joseph, you know, they come back. They eat at his house. He puts his cup, his personal silver cup, in one of their bags, and he's setting them back. He's setting them up, right? He's setting them up. And then he sends his servant back to catch him on the setup. And now they're freaking out. And they run back and they throw themselves at Joseph's feet in his house. Well, please. Don't take, we have his old father. We have his old dad. And if the youngest son doesn't come back, he's going to die. Finally, we get to chapter 45. That wasn't bad for a paraphrase. And there's like 50,000 more things happen in between. This is one of those times in the Bible where they just give a detailed version of people's life. In chapter 45 of Genesis, we get to this part where Joseph, he gets to the part, remember Joseph as a young man, there was a coat that made him distinctive, and he was in charge of a message to his brothers. Joseph as a servant at Potiphar's house, his service made him distinctive. And he was in charge of everything in that household. Joseph as the head of a prison, as a prisoner, his character made him distinctive. And he was in charge of everything under the world. Now Joseph, as second command of a nation, his wisdom made him distinctive. This godly wisdom that he had. And he was in charge of all of Egypt. We get to chapter 45. Starting verse 1. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants. He cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence!" So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Can you imagine the feelings that are going on with Joseph? Over a decade has gone by since he was thrown in the fight. So it's 10, 11, 12 years have gone by since he was thrown into the hole and sold into slavery by his brothers. He's finally come to the point that he's seeing them. Never thought that he would ever see them again. And now they're there. Can you imagine if we're going to get to the dream he had where they had all bowed down? This all started with that dream. The dream he had where his brothers and his whole family, his whole household would bow down to him. The brothers misunderstood that you were going to roll over us. God meant it to where he would save them. He sees his brothers now, and he was toying with them and messing with them, and he couldn't take it any longer. Because he was there as an Egyptian, and finally he had to see them and embrace them as a brother. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered. He said, whatever had happened didn't matter. Because he had to see them as a brother. He had to see them as family. Verse 3, Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified of his presence. Duh. This guy's in charge of all of Egypt. Anything he says to happen, happens. And they're the ones that got rid of him. Because they had power over him. And now all of a sudden, the realization that he's alive, ta-da! And they're terrified. Duh. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt." Reminding him. "And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." See, Joseph is now matured. Part of this is not just for his brothers and everything, but he has matured. He has changed. He has gone from the little brother that was maybe a little bit of a snitch, a little bit of an arrogant brother as far as how he presented things. Now he has been changed over the course of events in his life because he remained true with God, and God began to mold him and change him and move him into the person that he wanted him to be. He says, and again, "And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance." I can still imagine the brothers just going, "What? I mean, their heads are probably just still spinning from everything that's going on. So then it was not you who sent me here. Verse 8 here. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all of Egypt. What an incredibly mature thing for him to say. An incredibly insightful thing for him to say, to recognize. Kind of like our video up here, where people are recognizing that life happens. There are tragedies. There are things that there are things that we go through in life that we were never supposed to. We were never meant to. Death being one of them. But God, in all his wisdom, knows that we will go through tragedy. We will go through change. We will go through heartache, but we will also go through love. And we will go through times of joy. We'll get through this. Verse 9. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. Okay, this is also a problem for them. They got to go back now to Jacob and go, Joseph's alive. The coat we found with blood all over it, can't explain that right now. Okay? Now, I know we're going through a Bible story and all that kind of stuff, but I promise we'll wrap this up in the end. This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father all about the honor accorded me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly. Sending them back. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him weeping, and he kissed all his brothers and wept all over them. Afterwards his brothers talked with him. Can you imagine the brothers going, dude, sorry, I really didn't want to do that. That was them. Maybe we don't know what happened. I'm sure they're embracing it. Like it's a real situation, right? There's probably someone going there. It wasn't me. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace, this is amazing. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, tell your brothers, do this. See, this isn't Joseph now. This is Pharaoh now coming down. Because Pharaoh knew Joseph and that he saved Egypt. He saved the known world at this time because of his wisdom. The wisdom that God had given him. They had recognized that God was with this young man. Remember, he's only about 30. And now his family's come here. Can you imagine the father of this young man? And so Pharaoh, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt. And you can enjoy the fat of the land. You are also directed to tell them to take some carts from Egypt for your children and for your wives, and get your father and come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours. Basically saying, listen, salvation is here, and when we do that, forget your life. Forget your past life and all that you had. God is going to provide new. Too many times in our lives, we get saved and we come to God, but we tend to bring the baggage of our past life with us. And so when something happens, we not only deal with the new problems, but then we reel in all the past baggage, and it compounds on our lives. This is just a metaphor here, but God is saying, in a sense, forget what was there. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all, Egypt will be yours. The last part, Joseph as a changed man. We've talked about the other ones. Now Joseph as a changed man in saving his family. His healing made him distinctive. Joseph, when he named his oldest child, it was about, he named him in the name of Manasseh. What an incredible meaning his name had. It meant that I'm healed from everything that happened in the past. I can move past it now. And you know what? Our past has a way of dragging us down. You know what? We can get stuck into the rut of tradition. Right? We can get stuck in the rut of just patterns of our life. And the patterns of our life can be destructive. We have this incredible thing about us that God has created called habit. And usually when we think of habits, we think of bad habits, right? But habit can be good forming. We can form good ones as well. But Joseph had come to the point in his life where he said, God, thank you for always being with me. In every situation I've ever been, when I went from the most favored son to a slave, you were there. When I went from that slave and I said, God, I am yours, and you put me in charge of Potiphar's house, you were with me. And when I was taken from that and thrown to prison, you were with me, God. And from that, when I went from there, and in 2 years I languished in prison, praying every day, serving every day, waiting for the cupbearer to remind the king of who I was. But in your timing, dear God, in your timing, Pharaoh had a dream, and you brought me out of the prison. And because of your wisdom, because I saw your wisdom, Pharaoh made me leader of all Egypt. And because of this, see, Egypt, they got lucky. God was trying to save Jacob and his family, right? And the whole dream that they had had where they bowed down before them, it wasn't that Joseph would be ruling over them or just to stick it to them and to be ruling, to manage their lives and take all that. Although he would rule over them, it was so that they would be saved. Joseph, his healing made him distinctive, as he was able to put the past behind him and allow God to come in and heal his heart and let him move on. He was in charge of fulfilling God's plan. We have this, in America, we have something called victimization that happens. Where we can get to the point of things happening in our life that we just feel victimized. And we carry that with us. And that begins to permeate every part of our life. And in our finances, in our relationships with people that we love and that we work with, it begins to just permeate every part of our life. This attitude of victimization begins to hit us. And I'm not saying that bad things haven't happened. Go over a couple of these things that Joseph did. One, he began to accept himself and realize that God was in control. He acknowledged and praised God for the abilities that God had given him and the things that he had accomplished through him. Because whatever situation we are in life, if we allow God to use us, he will accomplish his will through us. And he will use us to affect the lives of those around us. Because no matter where we are, no matter where Joseph was in his life, because he remained in God, he was a light to the world wherever he was. Because even the leaders, everybody saw it and said, God is with this young man. Here's something I want to challenge us all on today. Joseph was able to release and put the negative experiences behind him and focus on the positive. He refused to dwell on these negatives and said, or to say or do anything that would just bring them up again or throw them on other people. In a sense, he said this: the battle is the Lord's. It's all God's. I'm just here to put my life and faith in Him and let God maneuver. We've talked about this the last 4 or 5 weeks. Let God work. No matter what it is, let God work. And so today, as we have this week of where we talk about Thanksgiving, and if you've ever studied anything about history, you know what they were thankful for? Not for the food, for life. Half of them had died in the winter before. They'd frozen to death and starved and all that kind of stuff. And those that were left were thankful for life. I believe that for those of us who have had tragedy in our background that we haven't dealt with, that God is telling us right now, look at this man's Joseph's life, and I was able to do things in him because he had finally come to the realization that I am still in control, and that I can put all the negative things behind me. Church, it is time for us to lay our baggage down. It is time for us to lay the negativity down. It is time for us, and I'm not talking, here, I'm just talking about for God's church in general, that it is time for us to understand that the world doesn't like us. And if we look for any kind of friendship with the world, we're going to be sorely disappointed. So we need to stand up for God no matter where we are, and He will back us. Support us. Take care of us. He will see us over and through and beyond, right? Just like this whole, if you were to write this story, you could have never imagined that Joseph having the coat of many colors, right? And going out to his brothers and then going, let's kill him. They end up throwing him, he is our brother, let's just throw him in a hole. And having him be the ruler of Egypt. And saving them one day. What an amazing story. Only God can make things happen like that. It was because of a young man who stood tall. He wasn't perfect. We've talked about it. He's not saying he was a saint. And we talked about the humanity. And that I love that God puts things in here to explain the humanity of people. But even though he wasn't perfect, he continually sought God and what God would have him do at every point in his life. And because of that, God honored that situation. And he was able to fulfill what God wanted him to. This morning, as we go to prayer this morning, as we end up, I would say, you know what? As we're here, if there is any baggage weighing you down, if there's any negativity that you've brought forth, we can go back to even to the video. You get the change that happened. See, I don't know how, don't raise your hand, but if you've ever been fired in your life, it's terrible. Because you go, why? But, we look at that. If you've ever gotten bad medical advice in your family or bad medical news, it happens, and we have to deal with it. So I'm better to deal with it with God on your side. Financial troubles. Been there, got that t-shirt. Right? But God always manages to provide. And I told you, Terry and I were in college, and we were working, minimum wage was, I made college wage. I made $1.85 an hour. And worked my butt off at the college everywhere. Terry got a job at a local. We were working. We added up our bills. And we added up our income. And they didn't match, but we paid everything and ate. Don't know how. But it happened. So for those of us that are here, everybody, just close your eyes for a minute. If you would say, Pastor, I need prayer because I need to lay some baggage down. Would you raise your hand? And I'm not going to pray for your eyes. I see that hand. I see those. I see those hands. You can put them down now. We're going to pray right now that God will just come and move on your life and that you will release the baggage. That you will say, God, take it from me. Scripture says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. All your stress, all your fear, all your worry. He tells us not to worry about tomorrow. God is so concerned about us worrying and fretting and carrying that baggage around because he won't be able to use us like he wants to use us. It will be impossible for us to live a joyful life. Joseph could have said, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to be the most negative, mean person because I deserve to destroy my brothers. Let's go ahead and pray right now. Father, as we come to you, I say, work. Father, I lift my soul to you and say, God, change it, mold it, push it, whatever you need to do. Father, for everyone here, Father, for those who raise their hands and the baggage and negativity they're carrying with them, and it's weighing them down, Father, I pray that you would come in a supernatural way into their life, surround them, hug them, dear God, and take it away. Precious Father, you are so amazing. You love us so much. You just don't let the world turn and watch it. You are involved. You're involved in the messy times. You're involved in the awesome times. You're involved in every millisecond of every day of our life. And Father, for those here that just feel that need to release and relinquish, dear God, whatever baggage, whatever negativity they have, whatever wall they put up between them and you, Father, tear it down, take it away, and let us begin anew right now. Thank you, dear God, for all you've done for us. Thank you for your word, dear Jesus. In Jesus' name.